I'll tell you what, it's been really interesting being somebody who is not a technologist in that working group and listening to the things they have to say. But it gives me hope that we're doing this the right way, while we still have the time to do it the right way. So be on the lookout for that from the underground. We'll make sure you're all well aware. So big bad wolf time. You know what? It's time for something big data, big tech. But where is our big collaboration? That old saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's how it works for credit unions. We can't forget that, right? We know we can't keep up right now with the big banks. We know that we don't have the marketing budget or the cybersecurity budget. Sorry, Jen. They're going to get there. We'll figure it out. But we've got to be able to work together. So we say we can't keep up, but we can stay focused on our principles and values. Collaboration is part of that. So do we have it in us to create something big that keeps us relevant? Our next panel is going to tell us a little bit about that. So let's welcome to the stage Amber Harsin from Prodigy, Brian Hamilton from Origemce, Jay Mossman from AKUVO, Denise Wymore from Zest AI, and Anshul Verma from Mambu. Let's go.
All right, here we go. First, to fellow she-wolf Denise. Okay, so we're here to talk about big data, big resources, and big collaboration. And I'm going to start this off a little bit with looking back towards our history. And for reference, I used AI to ask this question because I was really curious what was going to come back. And I put into the AI and asked, what's the last time credit unions were acknowledged for big collaboration making an industry change? I didn't exactly say it that eloquently when I first typed it in, but what came back to me was in 1975, we are known for creating the shared branching network. Then I asked, okay, what's the next one? And it said in 1981, the California Credit Unions and the California Credit Union League came together to create co-op. Shortly after that, it gave me the Internetwork ATM network, also in the 80s. And then it skips ahead 18 years and talks about the CUMA law that was passed in 1998. And after that, nothing. It brought back nothing. So that was a little scary because I have been part of the credit union land since 1998. And I would say that that's not necessarily entirely true. But what that tells me is we've either done a terrible job getting out the word around that collaboration, or our collaboration has not been industry-wide. And now we're faced with new challenges. That was all before the digital revolution. The late 90s was kind of when it was starting, right? Like, I didn't have a debit card when I started in 1998 at my credit union. They were just kind of taking off. So now we're in this new fast-paced technology market where big data and big resources have kind of come to a head, and they've put us at an intersection. My question to the group, that's become the lifeblood of us making decisions, right? We have access to more than we've ever had before. We used to have to sit at round tables and exchange information to get data. Now we don't have to do that. We can go to a dashboard and pull it up in our own offices and make very strategic, important decisions for our organizations in the tunnel that is our corporate office, which has given us unprecedented potential to do great things within our organizations. But what does that increased access and that increased potential do to the idea of big collaboration? Are we in a space where today that intersection has made collaboration unnecessary? Is unity no longer one of the strengths of the credit union movement? And have we pivoted? So my question to the panel is to kind of start us off there and to give us a little bit about where you think big data and big resources are going compared to what has historically been a credit union superpower of collaboration. And are we in a space where we can pivot to a new model of collaboration to take us to the next level? Brian, I'll go ahead and start with you.
That's a lot.
No worries, just solve world problems.
First of all, I want to point out that I have both bands on, and that's because I actually don't think you can have one without the other, right? I think we need to be afraid, be on edge, be on guard, and that is the exact sentiment that will drive us toward innovation, creativity, collaboration, and success. So with that out of the way, to answer your question specifically, I do have a strong position on that one. And I actually say that the more access we have to big data, the faster that we can process data, the more data that we can grab, the more necessary collaboration becomes. I have worked with and for people that think they could build everything themselves, and I can tell you absolutely, positively, that is not possible, right? And even as I look down the panel right here, only coincidentally, right, one of the best collaborations that Origemce has had most recently is our partnership with Zest AI, right? Because we realize that they do some things really, really well. We have some really good platforms and understand the credit union movement, and so that's just a really good example of that. I think the other thing that I would point out as a case study, which is super new, and Brian Koss could not have set it up any better, is that as we look at what you'll hear us talk a lot about, top of funnel, which is part and parcel with embedded finance and everything else. All of these models, whether it's in auto or anything else, but especially prevalent in auto, and whether you're looking at brick and mortars like Costco and Walmart, or you're looking at digital retailers, or you're looking at electric vehicle manufacturers that sell directly to consumers, in all of those cases, credit unions have to be top of funnel. But understand this, it does not matter how big you are as a credit union, or how much you think you have in resources, you cannot win at a national level in those spaces, right? And I don't mean that to sound ominous, it is just the case. And I know, for example, a very large credit union that was on a very large EV OEM manufacturer site and was propped up as one of the leaders, and they dropped $800 million in loans on them in a month, and doesn't matter how big you are, that's going to mess up your balance sheet. So if we want to compete in the new markets, if we want to compete with embedded finance, if we want to compete with digital retail, if I love the whole aspect, and this has resonated today. Jay and I were saying there is no more PIF, there is no more primary, or PFI, primary financial institution. There isn't. It's your phone, right? A consumer can have a dozen different applications on their phone, and it's all about the transaction. And God bless those kids, they are spot on, simple, clean, fast, efficient. It has to be that. So we need big data to do that, right? We need each other to get there collectively. And the one thing that does make me think that it's happily ever after, if there is any industry that works so well together and that genuinely believes in all ships rise, right? It's the credit union space, right? And your CUSOs and your leagues and our partners. Good enough?
It'll do. Thanks, Brian. Jay, how about you?
I've always believed in big data. Matter of fact, I kind of realized, some of you probably know me from my last company, Accelerant, and I realized that what we ended up having every day, but it was dispersed, was 80 million members in the United States. Every night we had everything on those members from an account and demographic perspective, and yet we couldn't leverage that because it was quite dispersed. It was sitting on servers in each of your credit unions. And when I started this next adventure in life, I decided that it needed to be a CUSO, that we could have credit unions participate in that same concept. And what if you could do the same thing, but have it at this time in the cloud? to where every night, every member and every account was constantly being refreshed, and we could get to that 50 or 80 million members on a nightly basis, so we know what was going on, and to be able to feed that into people like Zest AI. Because the big banks have got 50, 80, 100 million account holders, and we can't compete with a big credit union that says, oh, I've got 1 million, 1.5 million members. That's just not big enough to do some of the training that we need across demographics and everything else that we do. And so I've always been a big believer of that. I also think that we have a tremendous opportunity when we start to share that kind of a platform amongst us to do things that we haven't even begun to think of, such as, I know we're in the auto business, right? And I know we talk about what's going to be the future, but there will still be autos. And unfortunately, some of our members will get those autos repossessed. And, you know, why are we dealing in a fragmented society of repossession when we collectively can control where those autos go to, how they get picked up, the pricing, the leverage, the costing structure associated with that? We have tremendous capability within our fingertips, and we're just not yet using it. The same thing goes with bankruptcy. We are looking today at trying to leverage bankruptcy big data, and this is going to sound a little kind of funny, but we're actually looking at every bankruptcy lawyer in the United States across, regardless of whether they represented a member or not, determine if they are a pit bull or a wimp. Now, what do I mean by that? When we go into bankruptcy, it's nice to know whether the lawyer that's representing your member is a pit bull, because guess what they're going to do? They're going to paper you to death, right? And maybe if we could start to use that data and start to make decisions as to whether it's even worth chasing it because of the type of lawyer that they have, then that might change the way that we're going to work. What if they're a wimp? The wimp is that lawyer that goes in and does nothing. So guess what? They are a great opportunity for us to go get our money back through the bankruptcy where we can. That can only be done through big data and training big data and trying to understand that. So I am a big believer in big data, and I think it is, you know, an opportunity for us to leverage what we have collectively.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, I'm going to totally shift the conversation, if that's okay. So 2 years ago at the Underground in Vegas, we rolled out the CU De Novo Collective, and it's a volunteer effort to start and save credit unions. And in the last couple of years, I have been meeting with a lot of people that tried and failed, tried and bailed, a couple that have succeeded. We really shifted our focus recently, getting together with very small credit unions to find out what their challenges are. There's 99 problems, right, for small credit unions today, and big data isn't one of them. It's little data. It's their core processor, and they're held hostage by their core processor. But there's so many models out there, and what we found out, the number one reason that credit unions merge today, expanded services. Number one reason. We can fix that with the QSO model, right? And there are some really good examples. Well, one of the best won the Herb Wagner Award 2 years ago, the Faith-Based Alliance. Do you guys all know about the Faith-Based Alliance? Out of Chicago, these aren't little credit unions. They're what I call micro credit unions, like under $1 million in assets. But they all had churches, different faiths, you know, all Christians. And they got together and said, let's all convert to the same core processor so we speak the same language. And then let's share in the back office services. That model, which is all collaboration, we've talked about this, it's all collaboration, can save small credit unions today. There are 320, I think, credit unions being held hostage by the F word, FedComp. And I'll tell you, when I've worked with a lot of, it's a DOS-based system still. Many of these credit unions have to be in 7 to 10-year contracts in order to afford it. So they are literally being held hostage. These credit unions will die if we don't help them. And I found a group of very small credit unions, there were 10 of them that were geographically in the same big city. And I went to that state league president and said, you know, there's an opportunity here. And he took a day to get back to me, and he said, the credit unions on this list are too small to serve, to offer any help. So when we talk about collaboration, we got some problems. We've got some real problems. But collaboration, in my opinion, is what's going to fix it. I'm super excited about the next NACUSO network because Ronaldo Hardy is now the CEO, and he's so committed to collaborations. Becky Reed, chairman of NACUSO, collaborations are superpower. We've got, I think, a really huge opportunity and a place to meet to fix a lot of these problems. We can save small credit unions from extinction through the CUSO model. 100% convinced on that. So sorry, I had to switch to small data. But my whole world is small credit unions right now, and it's like, and that's even my position at Zest. I'm head up the small credit union division because we are committed to giving small credit unions the best technology possible.
I'm going to tag on to Denise. There's 3 F words in the credit union industry that are holding a lot of credit unions hostage,
Yes.
which we could spend a whole nother panel talking about. Oh, you want me to come out? Well, she called out FedComp already, so we're going to go. FiServ. And my life's mission is to get every credit union out of FiServitude. And FIS is the other one.
Thanks all the panelists, and thanks Sue and the team for having me over here. Special shout out to George from AWS, who we partner with. I think really good point, Denise, and I'm going to pick that point up later when I talk about the happily ever after. So definitely want to like retell the story of the big bad wolf and the 3 little pigs in the context that we have here. So I think the first thing is, I think a couple of pages. Page 1 is going to be a little grim, where I talk about, you know, who the big bad wolf is. So the big bad wolf is definitely at the doorstep. And it's not a single entity that we can point at, but I think there are a set of external threats that face the credit union if you look at outside in. I think first is, you know, banks and financial institutions which have big marketing budgets, a broader range of products. That kind of makes it hard for credit unions to retain or attract new members. The second one I would say is the fintech innovation and the convenience of financial offerings that kind of poses a challenge for credit unions to sort of cope up with emerging technologies, given, you know, a lot of like the digital is at front. I think third, we already saw the panel of Gen Zs. It's Gen Zs, as Gen Zs move into the mainstream demographics, the expectations and needs of the financial landscape would change, you know, based on their outlook, their expectations, and the services that they need. So I think these 3, of course, there are other threats that, you know, cybersecurity was something that was brought up. There's a saturation of financial services providers in some extent. So I would say like all these factors collectively are the big bad wolf. And this is the grim part, which basically means that, you know, we need to like come up with a solution that incorporates collaboration. And I think that's the second part, which is, you know, are we ready for the big bad wolf that's knocking at our doorstep? Is it, you know, are our houses made of straws and sticks, or are we ready to fortify those with, you know, layers of bricks? You know, as the 2 pigs would tell you that the straws and sticks did not work, whereas the 3rd pig was able to, you know, keep the threat at bay. So the second of it, I just want to like paint a picture of what, I know there's an easy answer and there's a difficult one. The easy answer is we all know that credit unions should focus on innovation. Credit unions should focus on, you know, member experience and digitization. So that's definitely the path, but the execution is what the challenge is. And I think that's where collaboration and the power of collective investment in innovation comes into picture. And I think that's what Denise was mentioning, right? That it's not that easy to make that kind of investment for a smaller credit union or even a mid-sized credit union. So this is where like pooling investments to build out something that can be shared by credit unions across, building assets, you know, this includes big data, building assets and products and services, managed services that can be shared by a group of credit unions by pooling their investments into innovation and research. And I think this is already happening. It's just that we need to take that stuff forward. We've been working with Leak Data, which is AKUVO in Canada that serves 40 plus credit unions in the Atlantic Canada, and they have taken that first step towards modernizing. And what it really entails is like creating this infrastructure where different credit unions can basically focus on the CIO for creating those common assets, whereas also maintaining the individuality of the credit unions, because every credit union has a sort of different community that they're working with, so the product needs are going to be different, but that is what is possible. You can have that shared set of resources sitting on top and create that nuance for each of the credit unions while staying in the same infrastructure. And that's the core modernization journey that we look at, but it's a modernization journey in general. And I think that comes with challenges, because as you scale up this model, there's going to be like decision making, governance, and keeping the core values of credit unions at heart. But I think there is the first step that needs to be taken, because the big bad wolf is there. And if I go back to the fairy tale, had the three pigs been staying in the same larger, stronger house, I think it could have been happily ever after for all of them. So I think that's something to think about. And yeah.
I'm going to drive off of that a little bit. So I think it's easy for us all to acknowledge that access to big data and big resources has infinite potential for credit unions. We have historically, if we look at these examples, seen some really impactful services and products come out of innovation and collaboration amongst groups. But as someone mentioned earlier, we also as an industry have a heck of a lot of excuses about why collaboration can't always work. And we know it's hard, right? There's competing interests, there's competing values, there's competing requirements. It's really hard to get consensus. And I'm going to ask a bit of a loaded question here, but again, I'm going to go back to our historical events within credit union land where we've proven that you can do this. In 1975, when the shared branching network was invented, there were 24,000 credit unions. They all had to agree on something to make that happen. In the 80s, when co-op and the ATM network came about, there were 23,000 credit unions. They still had to collaborate and make that happen. In 1998, when we passed CUMA, sadly, there was only half of us around at that point. We were at 10,300. We still all had to collaborate to get together. Now, today, we stand at 4,700 credit unions. If you're going to try to tell me that 23,000 credit unions can collaborate and make something happen in 4,700, don't. I'm going to tell you we have an extremely grim future. Right? That's just the fact for me. So thinking about that and some of the challenges that can come into place when you're talking about collaboration and big collaboration that makes really industry level movement, what are some strategies that you're either seeing, implementing yourself, or that you think if we implement can help us get there? And we probably only have time for maybe one or two people to, you're going to have to make this really fast.
Can I jump in? Because I
Absolutely.
actually want to riff on, and it's related to that, so I'll tie it in, but with some of Denise's comments as well. So real quick, if you don't know the brand Origemce, right, it was CU Direct, so that's Cuddle, right, loan origination system and so forth. Here's a challenge as a true CUSO, owned exclusively by credit unions that we have faced for 20 years. We cannot or have not been able to serve the small credit unions. And the Herb Wagner dinner with the Chicago group, right? I'm not kidding right now. We were in tears at the Origemce table. And we looked around and we said, we have to give them our system, right? We're just going to give it to them, right? And we seriously contemplated that. But then what we realized is what we're going to be giving them, we're going to be giving them a tool that there's no way that group could wield it, right? That's our challenge, because there's a minimum cost to doing service, to doing a business regardless. So that that's torn at us. Origemce Lending Services, and this is not a promo, what I'm getting to your solution, right, is creating entities that can then provide access to small credit unions via a service platform. That's the solution, right? That's why we invested in Origemce Lending Services. That's why we're kind of doing things collectively. And then we just spun up a lender to do the same thing, right? It's not to compete. It's actually so the smallest of credit unions in Chicago can finance an EV loan that the big CUSO that has the funding can make and place the right member at the right credit union, that's how we're going to stop the consolidation. That's how we're going to slow it down, through that collaboration.
And do we have, yes, just I'll have 12 seconds. The other thing is with getting pricing. At the CU De Novo Collective, we've added a page, but we haven't launched it yet. But we're going to highlight small credit union friendly companies, basically, people who price for small credit unions. And you know what? There's not going to be many people on there, to be honest. A lot of the big boys are not going to be on there.
And I might say something controversial. Who cares? The issue is, are we growing membership, and are we touching members with the right values that we want to have? And we're in no different of an industry than any other industry. Look at the mom and small pop shops that are going out of business because of Amazon and others. The models change. And as models change over time, we've got to change with it. The real question is, how are we going to grow membership? And yes, some of it might be through some small credit unions, but let's face it, they will not have the capital resources to do some of the things that some of the larger ones will. I say we got to figure out a way to grow membership, and it might be through many different ways. It's growing membership and touching the people with our values and our mission.
I'm going to say something controversial back and say I disagree with Jay.
Good. Good.
I agree with him in principle. I think for credit unions, and I work with a lot of smaller credit unions, so this is where mine's rooted in, right? Most of my credit unions are $1 billion or below. Those credit unions are capable of using the tools available. They are outpriced in being able to access the majority of them. Some of the small credit unions I personally work with, and Denise knows some of them too, are some of the most innovative and creative credit unions I know, because they have to be. They have to be by force.
Sure.
So I think it's a little bit of a myth when we try to say small credit unions can't use some of the technology. I do think there's maybe not all of it, but some of it. Yeah, but they cannot afford it.
Totally agree.
So from my perspective, credit unions being rooted in helping the underserved means they have to have access within their communities to do so. So how do we make that happen? How do we create a space where anyone in any community can access a credit union who's really going to understand the challenges of their unique economic forces within where they are, right? Not everyone has the same economic challenges, and a rural city is going to have a different economic impact than LA. So how do we help foster that within, in my mind, it's also CUSOs. I think that's how we help leverage economies of scale.
Absolutely.
To be able to offer that into the other CUSOs in the room. And I love what you said about trying to find some solutions for small credit. We talked about this at GAC.
We did.
From the core side of the house, it's the same thing. We, as a collective, have an opportunity to put our skin back in the game and help our fellow small credit unions thrive. So that's just Denise.
And you all
sorry.
need to watch the video of the Faith-Based Alliance winning the Herb Wagner Award. It will bring you to tears, and will remind you, Jay, you need to watch it. It will remind you why we exist and the people helping people. And yes, growth is important, but not just for growth's sake. These people are doing literally the Lord's work in Chicago. So.
Yeah. I just want to, before we go, thank you, Jay, for allowing us to respond. And I think that his overall message about growing membership is true of small, large organizations, associations. It's our movement. Yeah. And our movement needs to touch more people. And I think that when we think of the small organizations, we need political force. There'll come a time when we end up in DC and we have large organizations instead of the passionate local folks that we need in this entire game. So I think that when we look at this, right, wrong, I love the fact that we're challenging it. We're all there for the same purpose, and that's impacting more people, both domestically, internationally, and that's what this is all about. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for stirring it up there.
Yep. No problem.
Yep. Good job. Let's give him a hand, everybody.